Hey, hello, hi, so if you're a regular viewer on my channel, you might recall me saying this in my Super Mario Bros. 35 review. 3D All-Stars and SMB 35 are currently the only games that are out, however, I think at most I'll only be sharing my thoughts on the individual games in the 3D All-Stars collection in the future. Yeah, about that. I've seen many opinions strewn about in regards to Super Mario 3D All-Stars, and after some brief reconsideration, I've decided I might as well throw my hat into the ring. I realize I'm really late on this, but I think it's probably better that I've had a few weeks with the collection prior to writing this video. So yeah, 3D All-Stars. Man, I never ever expected this to be announced or even released this year for that matter, and as mad as people rightfully got, I'm kinda super happy this did happen because I have had so little to look forward to this year. Just waking up, opening YouTube, and seeing this video right up in my subscription feed was an absolute dream come true. Now the first thing I want to mention before diving into the collection itself is the whole limited release baloney. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it, no excuses. It's just ridiculous. Not only because people straight up won't be able to purchase 3D All-Stars past March of 2021, making some really worry about whether or not they'll be able to get it, but also because this is going to be one of the standout big game announcements for Mario's 35th anniversary, so to think it'll just disappear after 2021 is just really stupid. You can argue all you want about how All-Stars on the Wii was limited or how the Kirby Dream Collection was, but the difference is, you couldn't buy those collections digitally. Now of course you were able to buy most if not all of these games included in their respective collections on the Wii Shop channel, but in 3D All-Stars case, none of the games are on the eShop, nor are they available through a Wii or N64 online service, which in itself is also pretty ridiculous. By comparison, the Wii U has far more options for classic Nintendo titles. Again, to be fair, the Wii U is an older console, but 3 years in, it got a good number of titles from the NES to the Wii, and we're still like 3 years into the Switch's life, and no sign of N64 games being added is even apparent yet. But that's an entirely different discussion, so the point I'm trying to make is that there's no reason for Nintendo to stop production of both the physical and digital releases of 3D All-Stars, especially when you consider it doesn't cost Nintendo anything to just have it up on the eShop. The only reason I can see for this is that Nintendo is probably just going to release the games individually on the eShop or sometime in the next decade put them on the online service. As much as I hate to say it, the more likely option that I can see happening is Nintendo putting them on the eShop later for individual purchase. Anyway, all of that is a discussion for another day, so let's get into the collection itself. Right off the bat, the title and game selection screens do put me off just a little bit. It doesn't feel really like a Mario-themed selection screen. I don't know, there's just not much personality here. Now one touch I do appreciate is the soundtrack selection. I know many people will probably bring up the fact that it just takes a quick Google search to find each game's soundtrack, but I'm not gonna lie, I don't care. I just love how each time you go back to the game select, a new track is randomly chosen, and so sometimes I just have to sit there a minute to really appreciate the music. The only complaint I would have to raise is that there aren't any options for looping tracks, skipping ahead, any of that. Now about the games themselves, I don't think I've had any more fun playing them before now. Mostly 64 and Galaxy, as Sunshine is, well, I mean, we'll get into that in a separate video. Regardless, all of them play super well on TV or in handheld. I will say it's a bit disappointing that Nintendo didn't find some way to put 64DS in the collection instead of the original version, but to me it's not a huge missed opportunity, just something that I would have preferred, especially since they hardly touched up on the graphics of each game anyway. Now don't get me wrong, 64 does look better, but with the lack of an upscaled aspect ratio, I think that does kind of hurt my opinion on it. I know I previously defended this decision, however, looking back on it now, I disagree with the point I made about it in my Anniversary Direct discussion video. My reasoning for defending that specifically was because I had played the fan-made PC port and noticed that with the 16:9 aspect ratio came a few unintended glitches and visual errors. The issue with this point is that Nintendo made the game, so therefore they should have the source code. That and Nintendo is a much bigger team than any Mario 64 PC port team out there combined, so if anyone could implement it, it would be them. Honestly, the PC port didn't even have it that bad. I was just trying to defend Nintendo for no real reason, and I kinda rushed the script, so... This segues into my next point, so let's talk about it. A lot of people seem to be under the impression that this collection would contain remasters of each game, and if I'm gonna be blunt here, I do not understand why people are having such hissy fits about it. Sunshine and Galaxy already hold up perfectly fine in my opinion. 64 is the only exception to this, but to me it would be a bit weird to have one game remastered and then the other two just getting some slight visual touch-ups. Since the collection is limited, I would find it interesting if only then Nintendo were to remaster 64. Just a thought. Anyway, as for Sunshine, I'm fine with most of the changes made to it, but the uninverted controls for aiming were a bit bizarre to get used to. I don't really get why they changed it and not change the inverted flying controls in Galaxy. Just a weird bit of inconsistency, I suppose. Another complaint about the collection that I don't get is the lack of pressure-sensitive spraying. The only mission in which it's a hindrance is one of the casino levels, but even then it's still perfectly doable. Lastly, Galaxy has just been a joy to replay. I was afraid that it wouldn't feel comfortable to play in handheld, but out of the two options I almost prefer playing it there than on the TV. Especially with spin jumping finally being mapped to a button. The pointer controls aren't quite as good in docked mode, but I think that comes down to the fact that pointer movement isn't tied to a sensor bar. It's certainly not a deal breaker, but constantly having to reset the pointer is pretty annoying. Although in handheld, I think it actually works better due to the touch controls, so a plus on that I suppose. I genuinely prefer playing it on handheld whenever I'm doing one of those motion-controlled missions with the little blue stars or the races, you know, stuff like that, because it feels a lot better in handheld. Apart from that, I've found the games to control really well with the Joy-Cons and the Pro Controller. As for Galaxy, I think I'm gonna need some more time to get used to playing it with the Pro Controller, because personally, I really don't like how it feels to use the pointer with it, but Sunshine and 64 control like a dream with it. Overall, 3D All-Stars is a pretty lazy collection of ports, but I guess I just can't help but not care. Granted, I'm not implying people aren't allowed to dislike it, but I still enjoy it regardless of some of the issues it has. I have been, quite frankly, addicted to trying to get as many stars as possible in these games, and I'm sure sooner or later I'll be making videos on that. But those were my thoughts on 3D All-Stars. Let me know what you think about the collection in the comments, and as always, do consider subscribing if you would like to see more content like this, because it helps my ego. That was a joke, please don't take that seriously, that was a joke.